Welcome to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. The podcast that covers all things about humans, technology, and particularly the bit in between.
And welcome to this episode of 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. And today, we are facing the realities of applying human factors in real-world scenarios. One of the really great things about hosting this podcast is not only having an opportunity to talk to new people and having a great excuse to drop into their Twitter DMs and say, look, can you come? I'd like to have an opportunity to chat with you. But it's also a really great excuse of having to catch up with friends who I've known for a long time and hopefully find out something new about them, something more about what they've done in their careers that maybe we haven't found out today. And today is one of those latter experiences. So I'm really looking forward to this. I've mentioned about the ergonomics conference this year quite a few times because it was so nice to be in an environment where we're meeting people again and chatting and generally having a drink. But for me, there was one huge standout moment, and that was the Institute lecture delivered by Suzy Broadbent. The reason for this was it was a moment that she talked about the delivery of human factors in practice. I'm not talking about that fantastic research study where we get a lovely plan to satisfy all the academic requirements as listed in the book, but that situation where you are maybe one or there's maybe a couple of you as practitioners and you've got to juggle everything. And that's not only just juggling sorting everything else out, but the changing engagement with the project, the user communities changing, evolving, and not only making do with what you've got, but actually having that, a dynamic ability to maximize every engagement to get the maximum input for the good of that product or service that you're trying to deliver. Suzy's full and frank lecture did spark quite the debate, and the discussion in the hall has not only resonated during the event itself, but actually afterwards I've had more than one discussion and that has referred back to, well, Suzy said this. So when I reached out to Suzy and asked her to come and share some of her experiences with us, then she enthusiastically agreed, which I'm very pleased about. So welcome to the podcast, Suzy.
Hi, Barry. Yeah.
You're already worried about what you've let yourself in for now, aren't you?
I know. I should just learn to keep my mouth shut, shouldn't I?
Yeah, but where's the fun in that? So just to give those people who maybe weren't at conference or who haven't worked in the sort of same sectors as you at the moment, can you tell us a bit about your current role? Because I'm not actually entirely sure what you do on the current role, because you left us in defence and you've gone to do new things. So what are you doing, and what's your day-to-day look like?
Okay, so my official title is I'm a national investigator for the Healthcare Safety Investigation Branch. So you will know from your years in defence and other industries that we have accident investigation branches. We have them in defence, we have them in rail, we have them in maritime. And it was an idea about 5 years ago that actually we should probably have one for healthcare as well. So that was set up about 5 years ago. And the idea is that we carry out more systems investigation instead of apportioning blame and, bad doctor, bad nurse, don't do that again. Send them for more training. We actually try and look at the systems and understand, if it's happening in one trust, it's probably happening in other trusts. And what can we learn nationally from a particular event in one hospital that gives us that mirror into what's going on across the healthcare system. And because we're a national, because we investigate nationally, we can make recommendations right in the top at NHS England, Medicine and Healthcare Regulatory Authority, places like that, so it can be changed hopefully across the system so that we're not seeing the same adverse events happening over and over again. So my day-to-day role, I'll have a number of cases, a number of investigations. So I'll go out and I'll look at the initial reference event that's been referred to us, either by a family member or by the trust themselves even. They generally do serious incident reviews locally within the hospital. But again, that learning doesn't get shared elsewhere. So they can call us in and we can come in and have a look and see what we think from our systems perspective. So we'll interview staff, we'll do observations. I'm quite relieved that I haven't actually fainted during a surgery yet. I'm actually all those years of watching Grey's Anatomy have really paid off.
So that's CPD right there.
Exactly. I shall tell my husband that next time he tells me to switch it off. But yeah, so it's really interesting. So it's going out, interviewing people, understanding what's going on, looking at what the national picture is, what standards do they work to, what advice is there out there, can we talk to the Royal Colleges, can we do this, can we help, basically. So yeah, it's interesting. I am at the stage at the moment of just writing up, though, which is less of my thing.
Down that accountability stuff.
I know. But we publish the reports. You can see them on the website, and various calls of reports that we are in the process of, so that people can get in touch and offer any advice or experience that they've had as well. So there's only about 15 of us in the team. It's an odd mix, I would say. So when it was initially set up, it was very much taken as the blueprint from air accident investigation, just put into healthcare. So we've got a few people from there. So we've got a number of ex-military types. We've got a few people in from healthcare, ex-nurses, ex-midwives, ex-doctors, kind of thing. We've got a few human factors people. And then we've got a couple of legal people, ex-coroners and things like that. So
that's an eclectic mix right there. That sounds quite cool.
It is, and the idea is that the first investigation I was sent with somebody with a medical background, so that they could help me navigate all the new acronyms and things that come out when you change domain, when you change discipline, when you change aircraft, when you change
Yeah.
So it's really good, yeah.
So you mentioned you looked at it from a systems perspective, because when we've delved into healthcare in the past with some of the previous interviews, we tend to focus on non-technical skills. It's like sort of resource management and things like that. But from what you're saying, actually, what you're looking at is much broader than that. You're looking at the full breadth of human factors, or just a wider subset, or?
Yeah, I mean, that is the intention. So, currently I'm writing sections about cognitive workload. I'm writing sections about currency and competency. I'm writing sections about HMI design. You see what's there when you go out and you look at the investigation. There is, as you've picked up on, this issue in healthcare that they do see human factors as: are you hungry? Are you angry? Are you late? Or are you tired? Is the acronym I've seen. HALT.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
Hungry, angry, late, or tired. And predominantly all those things. But that's kind of where the limit of human factors goes. They've tried to bring in a lot from aviation, but they haven't really necessarily got the culture change behind it.
Right.
So they go, oh, checklist, brilliant idea. But then they don't necessarily understand how seriously aviation take their checklists.
Yeah.
And how they carry them out. So it's trying to cross-pollinate, I think, between what we've learned in other industries and what we can bring across to healthcare.
That's really cool. Right. So obviously I've known you for a while, but all of that time I've known you, you've been in defence. But you haven't spent all of your time in defence either. So how did you get started in human factors? Because most people don't actually recognise what human factors is until a certain point where it was always like a light bulb moment or a gradual input. What was your sort of introduction to human factors? Why did you get involved?
I went to Manchester University to do psychology. So at Manchester University at the time was Jim Reason of Human Error book fame. Well, actually, he wasn't there in my first year. He was off writing the organisational accidents book. So we had Rebecca Lawton, one of his PhD students, who's now Professor of Healthcare at Leeds, deliver his lectures. But it was then that, I really understood it it was amazing. All the psychology lectures are obviously fascinating, but being taught cognitive psychology, which I'd learned at A-level, but in a very, you can remember this many things, you can do this, memory does this is how we think attention works, kind of stale kind of way, to suddenly have it presented in a really applied way, in a let's watch this episode of Air Crash Investigation.
Oh, here we go.
And apply it that way.
Yeah.
It was that kind of, you really felt that there was a role there and a job there and a really important application of psychology there. So that's where I got into it. Plus, Jim Reason was my tutor, and he would often be like, oh, I won't be here next week. I'm talking to Air Switzerland. And I thought, I kind of fancy that job.
I was going to say, yeah, that's quite cool. So what's been the so even then, if you're doing that sort of psychology that applied, was it that point where either Reason sort of give you, told you about human factors and ergonomics, or did that come later, or was that there and then?
No, that was very much then and there. So I did the modules that were running in organisational accidents and human factors at the time. And then after I finished, I applied for lots of like research assistant jobs in psychology, but I think everybody was, and it was really difficult to get into. So I thought I'll go back and I'll do a master's. And at the time, Leeds, which is near where I'm from, was running a human factors and ergonomics master's. So I got myself on that and yeah, took it from there basically.
So when you went and got your masters, what happened next?
What happened next was I applied for a variety of roles, and I got one at Atkins Engineering, a company I would never have normally applied to as a psychologist. You know, you don't really get this career structure in psychology where they go, oh, you can go and be a human factors person. You know, you generally get the, you know, you're going to be clinical, you're going to be forensic. You know, this is the skill set. You know, whereas this was kind of different. So I didn't really know where to apply for these kind of things. But this role at Atkins came up, and it was working for CIRRUS, which is Confidential Information Reporting and Analysis System for the railways.
Right.
So people could phone up and tell us their safety concerns. We would go back to the company, say, this is what we've had reported to us. What are you going to do about it? We'd publish a journal so everybody knew. So I spent about a year there, you know, just living in fear of the phone ringing and have to do an interview. We'd all just sit there, go, oh God, it's your turn. But it was great because you never knew what you were going to get end at the end of the phone. It could have been a signaller, it could have been a driver, it could have been, you know, someone a track layer. You know, you just had to be ready to ask those questions to kind of understand what their issue was and what could potentially be done about it. So after I'd done a year there, I moved to the CIRRUS core facility where they did more of the analysis of what the reports were coming in, you know, oh, look, there's loads of reports about fatigue. Oh, look, there's loads of reports about this. And therefore we could publish more on that and, you know, make more targeted recommendations almost in saying, look, this company appear to have an issue with this, you know, just do the analysis of what's coming through the door. And then from there, still with Atkins, I got seconded down to London for the London Underground Modernisation and Refurbishment Programme.
That sounds fun.
Redesigning tube stations, yeah. They're putting in new systems, new station management systems, but yeah, overhauling the control rooms for London Underground, basically. So, yeah.
So was that with you? Were you working as part of a team then, or were you on your own?
Yeah, it was a very multidisciplinary team there. They had there was a number of human factors people sent down there, based down there. But we'd each be in separate teams for different train stations. So, you know, I'd be doing Earl's Court, Stamford Brook, somebody else would have these, you know, other ones. But we'd be working with the HVAC people, the lighting people, all the mechanical engineering, all the different, we'd have separate teams, which was really cool. It must have been 2002 because anyway, we got the phone call saying, oh, London's got the Olympics, so we immediately all had to shift to East London.
Yeah. So do you now go through the underground, sort of knowing the different bits where you had an impact? That's going to be quite rewarding in its own little way.
And where all the secret tunnels are.
Oh, cool! Yes. So you could also then be that secret agent who could use the tunnels because you got that knowledge.
No comment.
Well, fair enough. Let's move swiftly on. So so you've done the stuff for the Olympics. Where did you go next?
So because I was on secondment down in London, I kind of missed home. I kind of wanted to come back up north, and somebody sent me a job application for BAE Systems.
I wouldn't do that.
I know. Who would do that? And I thought, you know what, that sounds, you know, I don't want to work for a big horrible defence company, but, you know, I'll go and see what they have to say, and, you know, it'll be good interview practice. And I arrived for the interview, and it was a Friday afternoon. And if you know anything about BAE, you know it shuts at Friday lunchtime. You know, most of the staff leave. So all the jets were flying because pilots, you know, all the maintenance had been finished. So the pilots had the hands on the jets. So it was just, you know, like, oh, actually, this is quite cool.
Yes.
So I thought I'd go there for 3 years. I thought I've done 3 years rail, I'll do 3 years defence, then I'll go do 3 years nuclear, then I'll be an Uber consultant, and 15 years later.
Yeah, I was going to say there was something wrong with maths there, wasn't there?
15, yeah, nearly 16 years.
Yeah, no, I mean, one of my enduring memories was one I think, was it my first trip up to Wharton, or certainly one of my early trips up to Wharton, and you met us at the terminal, and it was quite cool. I sort of stepped off. I didn't know what I was doing, didn't know where I was going, and just as you said, Lo, then the red arrows flew by, and I was like, "That's impressive." To get that sort
You're
of
welcome, Barry.
Yeah, I was blown away. I mean, just have that on tap was fantastic. But so what sort of projects did you get involved with that you can tell us about with BAE then? Because 15 years, you must have done one or two.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of different cockpits. So I started on Tornado. They were doing a big upgrade to the Tornado. In that they'd finally got the computing power above 1 megabyte.
Kids today just don't get it, do they?
I know, the Tornado suddenly had colour, so it was trying to convince people that colour should just be used sparingly and not just to put colour all over the cockpit.
Yeah.
You know, why is this red? Why is it bad? Then don't make it red, kind of thing. So, but yeah, there was the upgrade. I think it was the tactical information stuff that you were working on as well for the Harrier. So I did that, and the secure comms for Tornado, and then moved over to Typhoon Cockpit Group, Eurofighter, 5 years there, doing cockpit assessments, and again trying to get human factors more involved in the design side. Mm-hmm. They traditionally, you know, the human factors people had fought really hard to get involved in the assessments when they brought all the pilots in to do the assessments and ask the human factors questions, but they hadn't managed to get as far as getting involved in the design side yet. Yes. So me and my colleague Annette at the time really pushed to get us involved in the design side, because we were going to assessments going, that looks a bit rubbish. I wouldn't have designed it like that. And then, do you know what, guys? If you'd asked us this earlier, we would have said a definite no to that design.
Which doesn't tend to go down well either, but
no, it doesn't. No, and that was it. It was learning to be able to stand up and hopefully not offend people at the same time. But then they didn't necessarily care about offending the human factors people. They referred to as jellies for a long period of time, and that they couldn't nail us down to anything. Depends.
Which is true. I mean, that's our job. But actually, I hadn't thought of that before. But you are absolutely bang on. We spend an awful lot of time not trying to offend anybody else, so they don't sort of discount us. But then we're just meant to suck it up from their perspective and take almost, because we work with so many different user groups that you know, it's not one person. It's not like single bullying or anything like that. But it's almost like institutional. We just meant to suck it up.
A colleague said to me a while ago, he said, not only are you a human factors person who people don't listen to, but you're a woman who people don't listen to. You've got the double whammy.
Yeah. It's I'd never thought of it quite like that before. So then you've been involved with loads of projects at BAE and made a substantial impact on the domain as well, because of the work that you've been up to. What prompted the move to health then? If you're illustriously well known in the defence world, did you just want?
So I was working on Tempest, future cockpit, future fighter, coming into service 2035, I think the time frame is. And it's like, that's a long time away. So I thought, do I really want to, the rest of my career working on potentially just one aircraft? Is that what? I mean, it's doing loads of cool stuff, don't get me wrong. There's so much cool stuff going on. But I'd had a bad day. And I went home and I looked on the jobs board. Simple as that. I'd always been interested in health. In my MSc, I looked at how healthcare professionals cope with shift work.
Right.
And I think with COVID and things like that, I just thought healthcare really needs some human factors help. I'm really interested in getting into it, because I don't know if you've ever looked, but a lot of the human factors jobs in healthcare say you must have been a clinician.
Yeah, yes.
You've got to have been a doctor or a nurse, and then we'll teach you about human factors, as opposed to let's get a human factors specialist in and they can learn the domain.
Yeah.
I think I've said to people quite a lot, I couldn't fly a fast jet either. I couldn't drive a train, but I seem to do okay in those roles. That's why you need to work with the user and ask the questions, because they'll know it. Even if I was a nurse, I wouldn't know all of nursing across all of healthcare. You know,
Yeah,
it's asking those questions, isn't it?
So yeah, that's really. I mean, to have that depth of experience, and like I say, to be able to transfer, because I guess the skills are the same. It's just how you apply it. It's new catalogs of knowledge. It's learning new domains and new things like that. So that's the bit, by the sounds of it, that keeps it interesting for you.
Definitely. So yeah, even though I was at BAE for 15 years, you know, I moved around. I think I did Tornado, Typhoon, R&T, and then Tempest, and then ended up running the human factors shared service as well. Where I think I probably realised management wasn't for me, and I wanted to do more hands-on stuff, which might have been a bit of believing as well. I actually just want to do human factors, because I think you get to a point in a certain company where they're like, management, off you go.
I guess that's one of the things, isn't it? We sort of get pushed through. Not most companies have a management stream. Not many have a technical stream. Some do, and great, and all that sort of stuff. But then, yeah, if we sort of assume that because you're a technical expert that you want to do management, you want to look after big teams and stuff. And you know, for some people, that's not the case. I'm still quite keen on keeping a small, tight team rather than taking over the world. So yeah, no, I completely get that.
Yeah, I loved looking after the human factors team. That was great. I loved having people with loads of different levels of experience, and you know, seeing all the new graduates come in, and you know,
it's like your little HF family.
Exactly. As long as it's HF, I'm all good.
Yes, it's then when it gets broader and stuff that you're like, but. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk about, you know, your experiences, about the kind of what you relate to in the lecture, but about how we apply it in the real world and sort of, I guess, that differentiator. So we'll be back right after this break.
You are listening to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. We wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you for your support. You can help further by rating us through your podcast provider, sharing us through social media, and telling your friends and colleagues. Let's work together in raising awareness of the value in putting users at the center of what we do.
And welcome back. Today we're talking with Suzy Broadbent about the realities of applying human factors on the ground. So, Suzy, for everything you've sort of highlighted, you've sort of mentioned about having to integrate with teams and about having to almost sell human factors. Why do we need to shout? Isn't it obvious about the fact that, you know, we add value? Why is it obvious to us and nobody else?
I know. It's just really hard, isn't it? I think it's because it's really difficult to show the accidents you prevented. It's really easy to show accidents where human factors hasn't been considered in their result. But it's really difficult to actually quantify that cost benefit, especially because people are sensitive about it. People don't want to admit that, you know, there was something in the designs maybe shouldn't have been there, or, you know, and you know, as a culture, we're still very much a blame culture. We're still very much, you know, blame the person at the sharp end. You know, different industries have, you know, different approaches to that. Some are better than others, but there's still pockets of, you know, I will cope with this. I will get over this. I don't need you to fix this for me. I will be fine kind of aspect from the users themselves. But also, I think there's a worry from senior management that we're going to add delays. We're going to add extra costs. You know, obviously, we come in going, yes, we need 1 million hours to be able to do a proper human reliability study on this, which I totally get the frustration with, which is, I think, the difference between the academia, where, you know, you might have 3 or 4 years to do a PhD or to do a study, versus like right, you've got 2 weeks. What are the big issues? What's gonna get this to fall out of the sky, or what's gonna, you know, what are you gonna die in a ditch over? That was the favourite phrase at BAE. You know, you're not going to be able to fix everything. What are you going to die in a ditch over? What are the bits that you're going to go, no, this is not going to work?
So, yeah, I mean, it is that. I mean, almost that the first comment you made around it's hard to prove something that it's almost like trying to prove a negative or something, isn't it? That and no matter, it's a constant call I think we have is, right, is everyone any case studies for and they're all invariably, well, this accident happened, and you start throwing out 3 Mile Island, you start throwing out all these air accidents and things like that. But it is hard to sort of turn around and say, well, actually, if you apply it now, you will save this amount of money, or we will make it better. Because again, if we do our job right, I guess you can't see it because it's usable. It's an interesting piece. So with what you've done, and you mentioned the academic side of things, because I think that was part of the discussion in the hall, wasn't it? When the at the conference was, you've got that the people who want to do, they've come up with these methods and all this sort of stuff. They've got great books and they are fantastic. We use them.
They're brilliant.
They're amazing. But you mentioned that sometimes you can't get the statistically significant number of users. You can't get beautifully repeatable experiments. Why can't we do that? What's the real world challenges that make this so difficult?
The real world challenges, again, are time and cost, but also availability of users. I mean, in healthcare at the moment, even trying to get interviews with people can be quite tricky because they are so maxed. If I was going to go in proactively and want to design stuff, would people prioritize that over the frontline stuff they're doing at the moment? I mean, the challenge in defence was always, when I was doing cockpit design, was, well, how many test pilots are there in the world? How many fast jet pilots are there in the world? How can you get, and how can you get some of their time to come and do what you want to do, and the simulator time that's been used for other things, or the cost of actually flying. It becomes quite expensive. I mean, luckily in defence and in aviation particularly, the test pilots do have quite a voice, and they luckily saw the benefit of what we were doing. So talking to human factors wasn't quite as good as flying the Typhoon, but it was better than going to look at some software or something that. So at least we were quite high up the pecking order, and they were quite keen to engage with us and look at what we were working on and stuff like that. So we got support from them for assessments and for design in the end. But other industries, I know they don't. It goes back to the benefit, doesn't it? If you can't see the benefit, if you've not done it that way before, then I think there's this thing as well about safety. Oh, we'll just investigate accidents when they happen. There's not this understanding that we could actually be a little bit more proactive about it.
Yes, and I guess do them things about this could go wrong as opposed to this has gone wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you do, and you talk about using test pilots, and I guess the same is true in any industry. We have these champion users, for want of a better expression. What are the downfalls of using them? Because I mean, they're great. If you get them on board, they're highly motivated, and I think almost in every domain I've worked in, or every platform I've worked in, I'm working that in domains, but they're always keen because they were either are part of it or were part of it, and they see it as a real thing that they want to help their friends or future friends, and so other people don't go through what they had to go through. Are there challenges with using them sort of people? Is there things? Are there potential issues they've got to be aware of?
Yes.
Could I set up any more question?
When I first started, I just thought, oh, these guys are so arrogant. These guys are so awful. Oh my God, I don't want to, because they're so direct. Because that's how they're trained. They're very direct in the way they put information across. They're difficult to get hold of because they're flying, whatever. And also, they're the experts. Should we really be testing our new systems on the experts? Should we not just be using, just the frontline pilots? And in fact, one of the requirements managers I worked with at the RAF used to have on his tagline on his email, "Fighting for the 100-hour wingman." He's like, he's like, I know I can do it, and I know they can probably do it, but the guy who's got 100 hours on type, is he really going to be able to do this? So, and it's something they do teach them at test pilot school, to try and put yourself back in that position and understand what might happen. Obviously you as a test pilot are perfect, but other people. Yeah. So we did have issues like that. I remember doing a hazard identification with one of the test pilots, and we go, "No, you'd never do that. No, you'd never do that. No, no one would ever do that." And then told me about 3 of his friends it had happened to.
Fair.
So again, it's just that question a little bit more, going, really? No one's ever made that mistake? Oh, well, actually.
So if we've got all these, it's not as easy to do it as the book would like you to believe, and all that sort of stuff. What can we do to make it easier? What are the sort of things that we should be pushing out there to get people to realize that, it's almost a just-in-time challenge, isn't it? It's doing.
It is. And I would have customers when I was at BAE going, I don't want a science project on this.
Yeah.
You've got 100 hours. That's it. What can you do in that time? And you caveat it accordingly, going, well, with the evidence I've got, or with the time I've got, this would be my recommendation. So I think it's understanding that balance. It would be really useful for me, with all the human factors methods books, if they went, if you're short of time, use this one, almost a flow chart at the beginning going, I'm doing this kind of accident investigation, which is the best model for me to use. I don't have time to read the whole book, do it in 5 different ways, which is the best one for me right now. And that's why I miss the Advanced Technology Centre we used to have at BAE, because we used to have our own in-house academics who could just phone up and go, hello, what's the latest in workload? How do I measure it this week?
Yes. No, it was it was the eclectic mix of people in that organisation was brilliant. And I've got to admit that whole bit. I've got a notebook, a digital notebook of what I call firefighting. Of right, this is going wrong. What can I do? And I use that as a quick reference of right, I've kind of got this situation, and I find that people not only say, right, what can we do? And I need to know like in 10 minutes about what it is that you're doing. I know, book. We can do a bit of that and a bit of that, and I'll take half of that, some of that. But you're right, it'd be really cool to have almost a published view of that from all of our experiences. So then exactly
it's our toolbox, isn't it? It's knowing which tool for which task. Okay, what are you interested in? Are you interested in workload? What are you interested in? Are you interested in SA? Are you interested in, we can fit the tools. I mean, obviously we're human factors people, will talk about all of it, but
well, absolutely. And I guess that's the other side, isn't it? I guess when people come and say, right, you've got this many days to work on it, we will fill them days. I don't think we would ever be in a situation where no 2 whole weeks, we don't need 2 whole weeks. A week is fine. There's always so much that we can do that we always want to fill the time available. So you've done that. I say you've done that jump from a number of different domains. How have you found that, and how easy is it to pack your bags up at BAE and then turn up in the healthcare and say, yeah, here I am, look at my toolkit?
I don't know. I've never really stopped to think about it. I just did it. Yeah. It depends. It depends from which domain you're jumping from into which one. So from rail to defence, and felt like, oh my God, this is so exciting. It's such a brave new world. Look at all these wonderful human factors people around me, kind of thing. It was a lot more that. Jumping from defence to healthcare is like, oh my God, what are you doing?
Is that because you've gone from a domain where, I mean, you've also gone to health where you've known some about it because of the work that you've done, but is that because you've gone from something where you were one of the preeminent experts in that domain in the country to a brand new
I think it's the respect for human factors, actually. Right. I don't think it's me personally. I hope not. I think it's the understanding of human factors and what it means. At BAE there was an established human factors team. Before the products go out, you've got your human factors involved, as the mandate says now, right from the start through the process. Whereas, we're looking at stuff in healthcare and going, how did this get into the system? You know?
I'd say it is a bit crazy. I've seen quite a few discussions now on Twitter and all things like that, and you see examples of things like, I don't know, pharmaceutical labeling or things like that, and you're sitting there going, but you've got 2 bottles that are exactly the same. One of them is like water, and the other one is something that's going to kill you if you get more than 3 drops in you. How's
exactly? Exactly, it's that kind of thing. I went out on a site visit recently, and they showed me one of the store cupboards, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And they went, "Wait till you see orthopedics."
You think we're bad? Look at this one. Brilliant.
And bless them, they said to me, "We have recently redone it so that everything for the left-hand side of the body is on the left-hand side of the stock room, and everything for the right-hand side of the body is on the right hand." Really, they don't state that should be a thing that should be done. Maybe.
Yeah, it's I mean, like I said, I've in many ways, I think just because of the learning I've done over the past, I think I started doing my learning really around the healthcare sector was at the conference.
Yeah.
Because I took the bit of advice we give, go and put yourself where you don't know, in somewhere where you don't know. When I was like, could be anywhere really. But I chose health, and just seeing some of the discussions, debates go on, the minutiae where people were debating, and then sitting there and actually seeing some of the other things that are coming around, and that, you're going like, wow, there is clearly, it's a fertile land for.
Yeah, I mean, me and some colleagues at HC are doing some work on fatigue at the moment, and you know how well established it is in aviation and the railways that the risk that fatigue has. It's almost just not, you're not able to talk about it in healthcare. It's almost because it's on the individual to declare themselves fit for work. So people in investigations don't want to admit that they're fatigued because that could go against them on their license.
Right.
But if the hospital's asking you to work all those shifts, then that's not on you, surely. It's such a culture shock. It really is. But speaking to colleagues who come from other industries as well, they're going, if we can just twist the dial a little bit, then it's got to be worth it.
I was going to say, because I've seen loads of episodes of ER and all that sort of stuff where they've been working like sort of like 25-hour shifts and things like that, and then like, what do you mean you're tired? But so if we were going to take human factors, I guess, because one of the things that I think we're seeing is there's still not enough human factors practitioners coming through, and I got asked the question when I was doing the Human Factors Cast podcast yesterday, where they were saying, "Oh, in the UK, I've got I'd like to do a human factors job, but I can't find any human factors jobs out there." And I was like, "You're clearly not looking in the right places because there's loads." But how could we describe, I guess, human factors to make it more appealing? How could we, most people fall into human factors at some point. Nobody grows up, they want to be either astronauts or they want to be, fast jet pilots or things like that. Nobody wants to be an ergonomist. What could we do to describe human factors to make it more appealing, do you think?
I don't know. I have been talking to Iris at the Chartered Institute about this, actually, because after I gave that presentation, I said, well, we're desperate for more people. We've lost a lot of people to UX, for example. Which does seem to be cool. People want to design websites, but not, other things. But I think it's the psychology for engineers and the engineering for psychologists, isn't it? If you don't quite neatly fit into one of those, it's a perfect overlap. If you're interested in how things work and also interested in people,
it kind of works for us. Yeah, it's
yeah.
So we're a really weird Venn diagram.
We are a bit, and we've got so many names. It doesn't help us, and what can we do about it? It's been around for a long time, although my colleague Laura referred to it as a teenage discipline. We're still not quite there.
True.
So.
But I think also because you put a comment on I think it was LinkedIn the other day, saying we all do human factors, and if anybody can describe what it is in a nice pithy statement, can they let us know? And it's so true, because
what's that tagline?
It's the question I dread. I mean, first of all, it's from my parents. So, son, what it is do you actually do? Well, okay, you're gonna need this is a 2 bottle of wine explanation job.
Yeah, I remember trying to explain it to my gran when I got my first job, and she said, "I'll just tell them you work on railways."
That's it. But see, that's been a really fascinating insight into actually applying this sort of stuff. But I've got 3 more questions for you, and then I'll let you go. These are the same 3 questions that I ask everybody, so it's not personal. But first one, have you got a book or a reference or a guide or anything that that is you keep going back to it time after time after time? Now that could be a fiction book as well if you don't have a technical book. But is there something there you use?
It's quite nice now, actually, not being in that firefighting state of mind to actually get into reading again. But the one I've probably referenced the most and still reference now is Ironies of Automation. You know, there's so much work coming on in human factors in this human autonomy teaming, and it's like we don't really need to reinvent with the wheel here. We know what the issues are. You know, they were put in that paper 30 years ago.
I was going to say, yeah, that's.
And every so often I go, there must be something new. Is there new? Are we still quoting this one? It's like, no, but it is. It's brilliant, and it just opens up people's minds, I think, to that issue and why human factors is important as well, because those issues that they're talked about in there.
Yeah.
You know, I remember Fiona Casey used to get really annoyed when people went, "We're designing UAVs. You know, they're unmanned. Why do we need human factors people?"
Yes, if only it was that simple.
Exactly.
So if you could go back a number of years is entirely up to you, but to give you advice to younger Suzy, is there any sort of advice you give yourself if you knew what you knew now?
Don't be scared of asking questions. I think it's really easy to do when you've been around the block as often as I have, and you can go, hang on, I don't quite understand what you mean there. Whereas when you're a junior engineer, it's really difficult to admit you don't know the acronym, you don't know what they mean. But nobody has ever, after I've asked a question, ridiculous or not, gone, that's a ridiculous question. How come you don't know that? Everyone's gone, okay, so this is what's happening. And, got out a piece of paper, basic engineering for the psychologist in the room. People like talking about their jobs, and they like talking about the problems they have with their jobs. They feel better having shared it with someone. So do not be scared of asking any questions.
Because I guess it is one of the things, isn't it, that if you're thinking that, then there's bound to be somebody else in the room thinking that as well. And like I said, for some participants, it's almost like therapy, being able to explain stuff. And this is just to make my life easier about who to get on the podcast next. Who would you suggest I interview, or what type of person do you think I should be having on here to have a chat with?
Well, two spring to mind. Rebecca Lawton, who I just mentioned. So she did her PhD with Jim Reason at Manchester, but is now very much into the healthcare psychology field. Runs the team over here at the patient research centres. So she's great. She's lovely. And she'd give a really interesting spin on it, on what's going on in psychology, I guess, still from an academic perspective. And the other one, of course, is our dear Jean Page.
Yes. It's cool.
So, so Jean's recently retired with her, God, how many years of human factors experience? But she's been a mainstay at BAE, and she is a hoot.
Yes. It's almost it's not often you sort of say end of an era is sort of justified and stuff like that, but it truly is.
Oh, she'll be back.
So some sort of consultancy role. No, Suzy, thank you for your insights. That's really cool, and it's been really great to not only catch up with you, but to hear how you've dealt with some of your challenges throughout this. And as I said from the beginning, it's great to catch up with people who you think you know, but actually I've learned a lot more about you. So that's been fantastic. And thank you to everybody for listening. Feel free to comment about your thoughts on this episode on the social media channels or whatever it is that you're listening to this through. And while you're at it, it would be really helpful if you could take a couple of minutes to rate this podcast on whatever platform you're listening to. It helps others who are searching for content like ours. We all know human factors is a world that isn't necessarily on the front of everybody's tongue, as it were. And so if people are trying to find it, you rating it will help them find it. As for now, thank you very much, Suzy, and we will see you all on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. Please do get in touch with your thoughts, questions, and comments. You can contact us on social media such as Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook at 1202 Podcast. See you next time. And remember, it's more than just common sense.